Hi, in today's video I'm going to take a look at installing doas on Linux. Now doas is a replacement for sudo, which was originally written for OpenBSD and has been ported to Linux. Now this is the version of doas we're going to be looking at, Open Doas, and this is the version in the Ubuntu repositories and on Arch Linux. It's available on Ubuntu 21.04 and Arch Linux, and on Ubuntu the package is called doas, and on Arch Linux it's called Open Doas. I'm running Ubuntu 20.04 and doas isn't in that repository yet. So what I'm going to do is show you how to manually build it, and it only takes a few minutes. And then what I'm going to do is go through some of the reasons why you might want to use doas over sudo. And some of the reasons are you can do stuff like run commands without entering your password. This will allow you to do things like mount and unmount drives without entering your password, run commands like apt update and upgrade without your password, your own specific scripts, and what I'll also do is, as well as covering all the options and the syntax, is show you a fix if you're running Emacs and Tramp and the ZSH shell and you want to use doas, because there's one line of code you can add to your Emacs configuration file to get it to work. So what I'm going to do now is switch across to this virtual machine and build doas on Ubuntu 20.04. So the first thing that we need to do in these notes that I've written, which I'll leave under the video, is install these particular packages, which are build essential, check install, git, and byaac. So we'll just copy this across. Yep. To our password. And you can see I've already got those installed. So I'm just going to change directory to the desktop. Next step. And what we're going to do is clone the Git repository. So we just click copy here, and we're going to run git clone open doas dep1. Just paste that in the terminal. Okay, now the next step is we need to change directory into open doas. So cd open doas. You've got the files there. And what we need to do is run 3 commands to configure, make, and then create a package. What this is going to do is it's going to create a deb file that we can install and then uninstall later if we don't, if we don't like it or whatever reason. So first of all, we're going to run configure in the open doas directory. We're going to run through some checks, and then we run make-j2. That's going to make it. And you can ignore these errors here. And we finally run this command here, sudo check install, and these options here. And this is going to create the deb file. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to prompt us, first of all, to create some some documentation. So yes for that. And then for this next section, all you need to do is press return at the prompt. So just press return again, and you'll see that it's now created a deb file for us, and it's giving the command to actually install that deb file here. So you can see here this is open doas and then a number here. We can just run this command here with the wildcard open doas.deb, and that will install open doas. So that's now installed. Run where is can be called open doas, I think. It's called doas. Okay, so it's installed in user local bin doas, and so the final step is actually creating the configuration file, and we do that by running this command here. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a command called permit keep environment user, and that's going to then write that out to etc doas. So if I paste that in there, okay, and now if I have a look in etc doas.conf, you can see permit keep environment, and then my username. So now we've done that, what I'm going to do is show you how to remove this. And first thing, if you have a look up here, the package name is actually doas. So the package name here that we've built manually is called doas. It's also called doas on Arch Linux, but on Ubuntu 21.04 it's called doas. So if you want to remove it on 21.04, you'd run sudo apt remove doas, but in this case we're going to run sudo apt move open doas, and that's going to basically remove doas for us. So what I'm going to do now is exit this VM and switch back to my main machine and actually show you some of the options that we can use with doas. So let me just close that and switch back here. Pour some tea. So first of all, this was the doas Linux port, and this is based on the OpenBSD version of doas. So if you search for OpenBSD doas, you'll come across these manual pages. So here's the manual page for the doas command, and at the bottom there's a link to the manual page for the doas.conf, is this. So this is the man page for the configuration file, and another link worth looking at is Debian doas, and this will basically give you some more options that I'll go through. So what I'm going to do is actually come across and show you my configuration file. So okay, so this is my configuration file, and actually what I might do is show it to you in Emacs because the syntax highlighting is better. At the first point was I could edit this file without my password, and I'll show you how I did that. What I'm going to do is actually just come across and open a version here, make it that larger. So this is the doas.conf file, and the location is etc doas.conf. And first of all, what we've got here is permit keep environment and then my username. And what I want to point out is the difference between the syntax for allowing a user and a group. So I just come across here. When we created the command in the VM, you'll see that it's actually created a configuration like this: permit keep environment colon and then my username. And when you actually create a user on Linux, it also creates a group of the same name. So that's why that configuration works. But if you want to specify a user explicitly, you don't use the colon. The colon is just for groups. So for instance, wheel. So this is how you would allow everyone in the wheel group to run doas. So what this allows you to do is run doas, and it prompts you for your password. So this is the first thing, is the syntax difference between allowing a user and a group. The colon specifies a group, whereas a user doesn't have the colon. Again, what we have is might be a good idea to actually go through the configure options here. So what you can see here, this is the actual sort of syntax of the commands. We either have permit or deny, options, identity. So these things in square brackets are optional. We have permit, deny, options, identity as target, command, then a command, and then optionally arguments. So if I just switch back here, what I'll go through is all these options. So first of all, what we have here is permit no pass. So that's basically saying permit and don't require a password for this particular user. So we're saying permit no pass my user, command apt args update. So basically what we're saying is allow this user to run, when they run doas, to not have to enter their password, to run the apt command with the arg update. And below that, what we're doing is the same thing. Permit nopass user command apt args upgrade. So if I switch across to the terminal, normally if you run sudo apt update, you're prompted for your password. If I run doas apt update, you can see it's running the update there without entering the password, and I could do the same for upgrade, but obviously I haven't got any upgrades. Basically what this is allowing me to do is only run those two particular arguments, those particular command, that particular command with those two arguments without a password. So if I run like doas apt auto remove, it's going to prompt me for my password. So what you can do is specify just the command. So if I was to sort of edit these, comment these out for a second. So if I omit the args, what we're basically saying here is permit this user to run the apt command without any password. So that will allow you to run any apt command with any argument to the apt command without a password. So this is the difference. Now the other thing that you can do is if you just specify args, what that means is only allow this user to run the apt command but without any arguments, which obviously might not be any use in this case, but this is how you can, this is the difference. You've got several different ways you can run. As you can see, you can run the command without any arguments, and that basically allows you to run the command with any arguments you want, or you can explicitly set the arguments that they're allowed to run, like this. Or the other option, as I said, is running it with args like that. And now the other important thing is the last rule matches. So this would basically only allow me to run the apt command without any args, because this is the last option, I think. So these are the different kinds of syntax. You've got command without any arguments, command with arguments, and command with the args, which disables any arguments. Now the next section here is basically how you would mount and unmount drives without a password. It just gets more tea. So very simple. Permit nopass the user command mount or unmount. I'll show you the options with args as well. So what this will allow you to do is to mount or unmount any drive without using the password. So if you run doas mount dev sda1 mount USB, it will mount the drive without a password. And the same you can do doas umount mount USB, and it will unmount it. What you can also do is you can specify the args. So if I specify the args dev sda1 mount USB, bloody fly, args dev sda1 mount USB. What this will allow is mounting only those specific drives to those specific mount points without entering a password. So if I try and mount any other drive to any other location, it's going to require a password. But those two locations I will be allowed to mount without a password. So there may be cases where you want to restrict a particular user just to be able to use a particular drive, and that's how you could do it. So the reason why you wouldn't want to specify args with this is because you have to explicitly set each one you want to allow here, basically. So you could also change this from permit to deny. So you could do remove the nopass option and do deny username command mount args to typically disallow them mounting those particular drives, but you could allow them to mount other drives. So basically, you probably want to keep it like this without the args for mounting of the drives, because otherwise it's just going to restrict you. So the next thing that I've got here is for ZFS, and ZFS is a file system that is an option in Ubuntu. And I made a video about how you can set up an encrypted root drive, an encrypted root ZFS on Ubuntu, and also how you can create an encrypted disk image that is like a TrueCrypt replacement. And basically these two commands will allow me to mount ZFS sort of drives or encrypted disk images and export them. Obviously, if it's encrypted, I'll still have to enter my encryption password, but this basically allows me to mount them and export them without entering my password. Now, this next one down here is basically allow root to switch to our user, and I'll come to that later because it's quite an interesting thing. Because there are cases where you want to run a command as root and then switch to another user, and this is how we do that. And then down here, what we've got is basically permitting me to run a couple of my scripts that would normally require my password without a password. And then finally at the bottom here, what we've got is permit no pass, keep environment, set environment path, root as root. And this is how we run doas as root. So for example, if we switch to root by running doas su, it will keep it as proper root. So that's my sort of configuration file, and what I'm going to do is go through some of the options here in the sort of the man page. So first of all, what we've got, one of the most important is the -c option, and we can use this to check the configuration file doesn't have any syntax errors, because if it has any syntax errors, doas is going to stop working. Now, unlike sudo, doas doesn't have a visudo command. A visudo is a mode that basically you run sudo visudo, and it sort of uses your specified editor to edit the sudoers file. But what it does is it checks for any syntax errors, and if there are any, it won't let you quit the file before you fix them. So what I want to do is actually show you how you can accidentally lock yourself out of doas and how to prevent that. So what I'm going to do is come across and open two terminals, and I can edit my doas config like this. So what I've done here is created a rule that I'm just using while I edit the file, and I'd uncomment this later. Basically what this does is it says permit no pass, my username, command, vi, args, etc. doas.conf. Basically in the terminal I'd run doas vi, etc. doas.conf, and that's why it doesn't prompt me for a password. So the reason why you want to have two terminals open, or the other option you can do is use tmux and have two panes open, is so that you can actually check the configuration file or any errors before you quit the editor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick an error in here and save the file. Oops. Save the file. And now I'm going to check it in the other terminal. So doas-C, etc. doas.conf. You can see here, doas syntax error at line 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be an idiot and I'm going to exit that file with a syntax error, and I'm going to try and run doas again. And you can see it won't let us. So this is why you probably don't want to uninstall sudo, just in case you do something stupid like that. So we'll run sudo vi etc. doas.conf. And we'll fix the error. Save the file. Now, if I run doas vi and then the path to the config file, it will open again. So that's why I recommend having 2 terminals open and not exiting the editor before you've checked the config is okay, because otherwise you'll lock yourself out. So that's the first tip. As I said, there's no, that I know of, vi sudoers command for doas. So that's the first thing we wanted to have a look at, is this option here. I haven't used this -a option. You're probably not going to use any of these ones. The only one you're probably going to use is the -u option. And what this allows you to do is run a command as a particular user. So basically you can run, by default doas will run all commands as root, but if you specify the -u option and a username, it will run the command as that user. And you can also execute a shell as a particular user. So this is the man page for doas, and this is the man page for the doas conf file. And again, here's the syntax. We've got permit or deny, the options, identity, as target, command args. And these are some of the options here. And what I'll point out here is the persist option. And on OpenBSD, that's done using the kernel, whereas I believe on Linux, it's using like a timeout, like a counter or something. So it's actually sort of not recommended to be used, I don't think. Let's get more tea. I never have enough tea. And then what we have is keep environment and set environment. And these allow you to manipulate the environment of doas and set and unset variables. I'll cover that in this next page here, because there's a good section on the Debian wiki about this. And the other thing that you can do is here we specify the identity, and again that's basically this section here. The identity is your user or the group. Okay, so that's what the identity is. And then we've got as target. So I'll give you an example as target here. Got 2 options here, and I'll show you this one in a section, in a second or two. Permit nopass root as my username. So this basically allows root to switch to my username, and I use that in a particular script that I'll go into. And the second one down here is root as root. So this is basically saying root as root. You know, you could say root as Bob, but we're specifying root as root. So that's that option, the as option. And then we've got the command that we're going to run, and then we've got the args. And again, I showed you that there's you just specify args on its own. Basically, it disables any arguments being passed to that script. If you just run the command, it will allow any arguments passed to that script, or you can specify args and particular arguments to just allow those ones. Now at the bottom here, what we've got is a section of examples, and these are basically, some of these are sort of BSD commands, this pkg add. But basically what this does, this first one allows AJ to install packages from a preferred mirror. Here you can see a persist, set environment, package cache, package path. the identity is AJ and the command is pkg add. And then the sort of second one here, we've got boot wheel to execute commands as any user while keeping the environmental variables PS1 and source push authentication socket for unsetting environment. So you can see environment is preceded by a minus symbol, a dash. So that's how you unset something. And you can see here PS1 is being set to doas PS1, and then we've got the authentication socket. And again, the difference is we've got the wheel group is specified by preceding it with a colon. And then the next option down here is allowing tdo to run pacman as root without a password. So permit nopass, then the user as root, and then the command. And then finally, this one here, permit nopass, that's root as root. That's the actual command that we're using, set root as root. Now on the Debian wiki, there's also some other stuff here. Basically, permit John Smith as root. This allows John Smith to execute a command as root, but prompts him for his password. And again, here's the actual syntax. And this is how John Smith could execute a command as root without entering his password. So permit nopass John Smith as root. Now what we've got here is this is how you can permit someone to sort of only execute one command. As you can see, permit John Smith as root, command apt args update. So you can run apt as root with the update option. And here's some other options. What I'm going to do is mention who am I. So what I'm going to do is come back to this section that I showed you before. Permit nopass root as my username. So what that basically allows root to switch to my username without prompting for the root account. And I'll show you a simple script on the desktop to demonstrate this. So what we have here is two lines. Who am I? And then doas-u, my username, and then who am I? So the -u option will run doas as my user here. So if I just come back to file and close one of these terminals, what I'm going to do is run this script with doas, and that's what it's going to do is it's going to run this script as root. So I'm going to be prompted for my password because I haven't specifically allowed this script to be run without a password in my config. So okay, so what you can see here is it's printed out root and then my username. So if I switch back to the script, what you can see is those two lines correspond to these two lines here. So first one, root. So when we first execute the command at the script, it runs who am I, and it says it's root. Now in the second line, what we do is we run doas-u, my username, and then who am I, and it prints out that it's running as my user. Now the reason why this is important is because there are sometimes you want to actually create a script that will run as root, but then switch to another user. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So let me come out of this. So what I have is, if I fire up Emacs, this will sort of show you sort of several things. What I'm going to do is run a script that creates a VPN connection. And what this does is it creates what's called a split route. So normally all your traffic goes out your regular connection, and if you create a VPN, all your traffic goes out the VPN. What this does is it creates two routes. It creates a VPN route and your regular route. And what it does is it does that using something called Linux namespaces. So I have a separate namespace called VPN that I can then run any command in that namespace. So it means I can run any command over my regular connection or over the VPN. And what I'll do is, if I just switch back to that config. So this is the script that I'm running here, VPN-netns. What I'm saying here is permit nopass my user command VPN-netns. So when I run this, it's going to connect without me having to enter my password for OpenVPN, because that's normally done as root. What you'll see is this script is run with these options: -a auth.txt, which is a text file with my authentication details, and -c and a OVPN file, which is a configuration file for OpenVPN. Now, if I switch back to here, what I just want to show you is the actual command with arguments would look like this: args -a auth.txt -c us_west, and that's the command that I actually ran in the terminal. Now the issue is if you explicitly set the arguments, hang on, it should be .ovpn, be correct. I also have other OVPN configuration files, like US_Washington or Canada or Hong Kong or whatever it is. And I don't think you can specify a wildcard in this. So I don't think you, this would only allow me to connect to this particular VPN without entering a password. I don't think that you can do something like have an asterisk. I'm not sure if you can have like an asterisk and have it match. I was actually talking to the guy who did the port of doas to Linux, because I couldn't figure out how to get this namespace thing working, and he was the one that actually told me about this command, permit routers username, and basically I'm using it with the nopass option. But I'm not sure, he mentioned something about pattern matching, and I'm not sure if that's actually referring to sort of like wildcards and stuff like that in the configuration file. So I don't think you could do something like, match any OVPN file. I don't think you could actually do that. So you can explicitly put in the args, but they've got to be the exact same arguments that you use on the command line. And this also applies to the path to the command. So, for instance, the full path to this VPN-netns script would be user local bin. Okay, that would be the full path. But if I specified this in the configuration file, I would have to type the full path to the actual script on the command line as well. Now, the other thing that's worth mentioning is doas only searches the system path, so it only searches user bin and user local bin for binaries. It doesn't search your home directory. So if you want to put in a path to a script in your home directory that you're trying to run with doas as root or something, you've got to put in the full path to the actual script here, and also specify it on the command line. There is an option to, as you can see down here, set environmental variables like path and stuff. So it might be possible to add an environmental variable for the path and specify your path like that. But this is something you've got to be aware of, is if you specify the full path in your config, you would have to specify the full path to this command here on the command line as well. Otherwise, the nopass option wouldn't work. So And that's something to be aware of. Is sometimes you don't actually want to specify the arguments because you've got to specify. I don't think you got wildcard matching, and you've got to specify all the arguments. So I'd have to, if I had like 50 VPN files, I wouldn't want to have to go like have 50 rules that said like US, like Washington, Canada, etc., etc. In those cases, what you want to do is omit the arguments and just allow running the actual command. So that's another thing is cases where you don't want to actually specify the arguments because it's not as flexible. So that's another thing, and this is another command that I'm running, the namespace command. So what I'll do is I'm going to open that up and show you that. Okay. So what you can see in this script is I'm running the IP command with the netns option exec VPN, and what basically that does is this is what creates a Linux namespace. Now this script has to be run as root with doas, but what this next section here does is doas-u, then my username -- $sign at. What that means is this is any arguments passed to the script. So what this script basically does is I can run this script called namespace. I can run like namespace sort of Firefox, and what that will do is that will launch Firefox in the VPN network namespace. Now the issue is when you first Firefox can't be run as root, okay? So and you wouldn't want to. So what happens is this script is run as root, doas namespace. It then runs this IP netns exec VPN command here, the first part of the command, as root, because it needs root permissions to do that. Then what it does is it switches to my user here with doas-u, my username. This -- basically it sort of like stops you running additional command or something. I forget exactly what it is off the top of my head. And this basically means any argument passed to the script. So I can like run doas namespace transmission or wget or curl, and what it will do is it will run that command over the VPN. Now what I wanted to mention is you can't, if you put in like doas like this, okay, and then try and run the script as namespace Firefox, what's going to happen, even if you have allowed this script in your doas config, it's going to prompt you for the password. So the reason for that is because if you don't prefix the command with the word doas, the nopass option doesn't work. So what I mean is, if I run this script here, namespace, and create a new thing here. So if I run doas namespace, like I would say Firefox, I won't run that for the moment because I've got it open. That won't prompt me for my password. That will just execute. But if I change this and put doas in here, and then try and run namespace Firefox, what will happen is it will prompt me for the password, even if I've still got the config open. Etc. So even in here, I've got permit nopass, my username command namespace. Even if I have that in my doas config, if I try putting doas in here and then running it without doas on the command line, you'll be prompted for your password. And it's because I think the nopass option only works if you run a command by prefixing it with doas, like this. So doas namespace Firefox, and what that does is that runs a script as root, runs that bit as root, and then switches to my user account, and then this @ will correspond to Firefox basically, so that will run Firefox under my user account. So this is why I can bring that thing up again. This option is useful here, this permit nopass root as username, because that then allows us to run a command as root, but then partway through the command switch to another user. And again, that's useful because you can't run Firefox as root. So that's another thing I wanted to cover. And what I do is I create desktop files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit, close this. So what I can now do is if I run this, okay, you can see that's opened up Firefox. And what that's done is that's using doas in the background with this script to put Firefox in a separate network namespace. And if I run what's my IP, what you'll see is that it will show up as I'm in America. Okay, so that's not my IP address. So that's how I can run Firefox normally, or I can run it over the VPN, and I can do the same thing with Chromium. And I covered this in previous videos using sudo, but now I can do it with doas, so I can open Chromium, what's my IP, and that should turn the same IP address there. And basically I do that with desktop files. So what I wanted to do is, because this is also important, because the commands in the desktop file have to match the commands in the doas configuration file. So what you'll see here is I have doas namespace, and then the actual full path to this script Firefox ns net ns. And basically what that script is, it's a script I wrote that basically bypasses the snap of feature of Firefox and just allows you to run Firefox and put it in a separate network namespace, because you can't put the user bin, the snap bin Firefox in a separate network namespace. You've got to do it with a bit of witchcraft, and I covered that in a previous video. But this is the important bit, this doas namespace here. So about switching back and forth, etc. Doas. So this corresponds to this. So this namespace command here, basically I'm saying nopass, permit nopass this namespace command, and again that script is in user local bin. And if I put user local bin, if I specified the full path to that script, every time I wanted to run it on the command line, I'd have to type the full path out with doas. But the important thing is that whatever your other configs, like this one, you've got to put the same options as in the config. So if you're specifying the full path in the config, you've got to do it in this file as well, or if it's just a relative file, you just put in the name like that. This is how I basically run Firefox in a separate network namespace, sort of using doas, and that would actually, the command I'd run would be Firefox-ns. See, that pops up like that without any password. And again, that's basically running the IP command, and then it's running Firefox. Now, the other thing that I want to cover is, let me open a browser up again. So Emacs and Tramp. Okay, and this has got a section down here, troubleshooting Tramp hangs. So Tramp is a mode in Emacs that allows you to edit files as root or over an SSH connection, and you can use it with sudo. And the way you basically do it is come across to the root. What you've got to do is you've got to be in your the root of your dired browser, and that'd be like the / and to do this is with sudo, what you run is sudo : and then your computer's name here. You can see it selected, and I put in my password, and now I can edit files. Like, I can come into temp, test file, and you can see it's just created that test file there. So that's how I can use sudo to edit stuff. Now you can do the same thing with doas, but there's actually an issue with ZSH. So just zoom in a bit. Okay, so the issue is even with a fresh install of ZSH, the prompt kind of conflict with the doas prompt in Tramp. And basically what will happen is you'll try and put your password in and it will just time out and then give you an error. Now, the only solution that I came across on this page is this one here by Easy Berman. Basically, the fix is what you do is run eval after load Tramp. So that's basically saying after Tramp has load, evaluate this stuff. And what it's doing is it's saying set the shell. And what I'm doing is I'm changing the shell from ZSH to user bin sh, and that's actually a symbolic link to the dash shell, which is sort of like a POSIX shell. You could also use bash. You just need to find out where your shell is, but it doesn't make any difference if you're using ZSH inside Tramp and Emacs, or the dash shell, or sh or bash. It's just ZSH has a problem working with doas, and this is the only fix that I've come across to fix it. So what I'm going to do is show you doas with Emacs. So first of all, actually what I want to do is list my bookmarks. So what I do here, you can see, is I've actually got a bookmark called root that corresponds to root. So what you want to basically do is go to root, go to root with your find file and bookmark it. And the reason for that is you can only run the doas tramp command when you're at the top level. It won't let you do it from anywhere else. So the way you run doas is after you've got it all set up and your config working and everything, basically you run find file and you type doas and then 2 colons, and then you'll see your username listed here, and then you put in your password. And what will happen the first time you do this, it will prompt you, do you want to create a auth info file, I think it's called, in your home directory, and it's going to say yes, no. Click capital N for never, because what it will do is it will create a .auth info file, a .hidden file with your password in it. So don't create the auth info file or whatever it's called, select capital N. But once you've done that, what you'll get is a prompt like this, and it'll say find file, doas, and then your machine name. And you put in like / and then the path to the file you want to edit. So if I come into temp, you can see here what I can do is now create a file. So I'll call this doas file, and so file 1. The interesting thing about using Emacs and doas is that you get persistence. So normally doas, every time you run it, you've got to enter your password unless you've specifically allowed it for a particular command in your config. But with Emacs, you get persistence built in. So you can see I've edited the file. Normally I'd have to run the command again, but I can do doas file2, doas file2, or file2, file2, save that, kill that, delete those. And I'm still root. You can see down here, temp doas at root. So you can see I'm root there and it's persistent. So that's the fix for Emacs. So let me just come back into my Emacs config, because there's some other useful options for Tramp. You can set the, this is the important line here, and I'll put links to all this under the video. Val after load, Tramp, set environment shell, and change the shell to something other than ZSH. And then what we've got down here is Tramp set completion functions, and this is for this is basically for shush. And I think there's another option down here. Yeah, default shush. And what you can also do is actually stop files edited by sudo or doas from being backed up. Because by default, it's going to back up files you edit in your .emacs.d backup folder. And basically this bit of code will stop that. So if you're editing, for instance, like a password file or something, you don't want it backed up into your backups directory or something. So that disables that. So those are the sort of tips for ZSH and Tramp and doas and Emacs. That's the one line that actually fixes everything and gets it to work. And remember, don't create the auth info file because it will contain your password. So what I'll do is just briefly go over the stuff we did. Open doas. So if I just come in here, this was how we installed everything. Again, if you're on Ubuntu 21.04 or on Arch Linux, you can install doas from their repositories. On Ubuntu, it's called doas, so you'd run sudo apt install doas, and on Arch Linux, the package is called open doas. But if, like me, you're on 2004, you need to run through this, as I showed you when I created all this in the VM. Basically, we install these packages: build essential, check install, git, byaac. After we did that, we cloned the repository. So git clone open doas --dep1. After we did that, we changed into the open doas directory with cd open doas. We configured it by running configure, make j2, and then this sudo command here. And again, we can then install the opendoas.deb file. And then after that, we can create the simple config by running this command. And if you want to uninstall it, it'd be sudo apt remove opendoas. But if you're running Ubuntu 21.04, it would be sudo apt remove doas. So that's basically how we set it up. And again, the config, etc. doas. Okay, so again, the first command you want to learn is doas-c, and the path to the configuration file, which is etc. doas.conf. And again, make sure you keep two terminals open because there's no vi sudo as command. Keep the editor open in one, check the syntax in the other, and only when the syntax is okay, quit the editor. Again, first difference is the difference between the user and the group. So users look like this, whereas a group will look like this. Okay, so that's explicitly allowing a user, and this is allowing a group. And this is how we allowed the apt update and upgrade commands without any password. Again, the syntax is permit or deny. So we've got nopass, so don't require password. Our user, the command, and then the arguments. And again, remember, you can also either specify to allow all the options of a command. So running permit nopass user command apt would allow someone to run apt with any of its options without a password. And if you specify like again some command and args, what that does is that that allows someone to run some command without a password but without any argument. So if you specify args without any arguments, it disallows any arguments to that script. So if for some security reason you want someone to only be able to run a script without any arguments, that's one way to do it. And again here, this is how we mount and unmount drives without a password. Permit nopass, the user or the group, command mount and unmount. And again, you can specify, as I showed you, you can specify args, dev, SDA1, mount USB, like that. And the same for the other one, to allow a particular user just to mount a particular drive. So that's how you do that. And again, these were the commands for ZFS, to import and export ZFS drives and encrypted images and stuff without a password, but still requiring a password to obviously decrypt stuff. This was the allow root to switch to our user, which I showed you why that's useful. And again, it's the quick sort of recap with the test thing. So test, put in the password, and of course didn't type it properly. And you can see, first of all, it's root and then it's my user account. And if I look at that file, you can see basically it's who am I, and then we're running doas, switching user, and then running who am I, which is why it outputs first of all root and then it switches to my account. And that's why you might want to have a bit of code like this, because it allows you to run a command as root and then switch to another user, for example, to launch a program like Firefox or anything else like that that shouldn't be run as root. And again, this is how you can run your own scripts without requiring a password. And this script is in user local bin. Again, if you had a script in like like a home username bin, say backup, one of these ones. So if I put this in, if I had a script in my bin directory, I would have to put in the full path here. But then you would actually have to run doas and put in the full path of this script in the command line for the nopass option to work. Again, there is an option to set environmental variables, so it may be possible to add your path to this, so that it will search a specific path. And another reason why that's useful is because you might have a script that has got something installed that's not in the regular location. So in a previous video I showed you NixOS package manager, and that installs stuff in your home directory. So you can install things like FZF, but it will be in your home directory. And if you run something as root and that script has got FZF in it, it won't search your home directory and find the script. So that's something I'll look at, is actually running scripts as root, but actually also getting them to search your home directory for either your custom scripts or scripts that you've installed with another package manager, whether it's NixOS or like a Python script or whatever. So that's how you run your own commands. And again, this is the root as root option to basically run doas as root, doas su root. So I think that's pretty much everything that I should cover. And again, if I just come back here, basically what you want to do is search for open doas. So open doas, this is the version that is in, this is the Linux fork of the OpenBSD doas command that is in the Ubuntu 2104 repository and on Arch Linux, and that you can manually build in a couple of minutes and install on 2004. And also the other things that you want to search for are OpenBSD doas, and that will give you the OpenBSD man page. Obviously, you can just run. If you just run man doas, you'll get the same thing there as on the web page, or man doas.conf. That will give you the configuration file. That's basically the same as this. Again, here's the link to the doas.conf man page. And the other site that you want to have a look at is Debian doas here. And again, that's got all the stuff basically like how you can allow a user to run as root, root without a password, run particular commands as root. So this is another page that's worth having a look at. But basically, that's open doas. I noticed there were some videos on YouTube about doas, but basically, mainly all they showed you was the first step, and that was basically. I'll come back across. They just show you the first step of. Get the bloody thing back open. And most of them, what they actually do is just basically show you this command. They wouldn't show you the actual configuration options or the syntax. They just create a simple doas file with one line of text in it. So that's basically why I've just sort of been working on some of this stuff to sort of run my own scripts or perform things that you normally need. Enter your password for like update and upgrade or mount and unmount. I wouldn't recommend using doas with shutdown and nopass. So I wouldn't create a command like permit nopass your user command shutdown now, because it'd be very easy with auto completion just to type doas shutdown and press return when you didn't mean to, and it would just automatically shut down without prompting you to enter your password. So there are some things where you want to require a password, and there are some things where it's okay. But basically, the things to remember: the actual syntax, and how you can either basically run a particular command with any options you want, or as you can see here, specify the options that you want to allow. So that's how you do that, and it's a much easier program to use than sudo. The options were a lot simpler, the syntax is a lot simpler. So the only downside is there's no vi sudo mode to check your syntax in the editor. So as I said, either use tmux and open two panes, or use two terminals and check your syntax before you exit the editor when you're editing doas. And again, the last thing I'll just show you again was while you're when you're getting started with doas, you may want to create a rule like this, commit nopass, your username, command, your text editor, args, etc. doas, and it'll just allow you to, edit your doas, configure out entering your password every time, and then basically what you can do is once you've got it all set up, just comment it out for security, because you don't want people just editing your doas file if they come across your unattended computer. So that's everything I sort of wanted to cover with doas, and also the fix with Emacs and Tramp. This was the only one that worked. Basically setting a shell to something other than ZSH. So just make sure, if you're using bash, you type where is bash, and user bin bash, whereas again in this thing here it's bin bash. So make sure you put in the right shell path there, but that's basically the fix to get doas working with Tramp and Emacs. And again, another benefit of using Tramp is that you'll get persistence. I don't know if if I come back to root, doas, see, I'm still able to come across here, test file. You can see I've still got persistence even after several minutes in Emacs with doas, even though persistence isn't enabled. And that is that's a bit down here. The persist feature is disabled by default and could be enabled with the timestamp. It's new, potentially dangerous, in the original doc. Kernel API is used to set and clear the timeouts. The API is OpenBSD specific, and there's no available API on other operating systems. So this is basically implemented using timestamp files similar to sudo. So they recommend not using the persist option for that reason. So have a read through this and some of the other documentation, but it's really easy to get started and create some rules that will make using your computer a bit more bearable. Oh, and happy Christmas.